Hi everyone and welcome to my review of Boardwalk Empire Season 1. Now in the last video I did mention that I would be reviewing basically all the seasons of Boardwalk Empire, and I will be over the next probably few months or so. I'll be reviewing all of the seasons of it. Now believe it or not, actually Boardwalk Empire was one of my childhood shows. Yeah, I did watch a lot of violent shows when I was a child. You know, a lot of people say most animated films is what they watched as a child, which I did, watch a load of animated films and shows, but I also did watch a lot of violent stuff. Scarface was one of my childhood films, and Grand Theft Auto San Andreas was my first ever game that I played when I was like 3 or 4. So yeah, so yeah, Boardwalk Empire was one of my childhood shows. Absolutely loved it. I watched every single season of it back when it was when it was shown on TV. Sorry, I think I was like 10 or 11 when the first season started, and yeah, I loved pretty much every single season. Maybe not the last one at the time, but I'll get to that in another review. Yeah, absolutely loved the show, and rewatching it now on Blu-ray in amazing quality, of course, and sound quality. A lot of it I appreciated even more, particularly the first few seasons. I definitely appreciated more this time round. Yeah, so the basic overall plotline of Boardwalk Empire is basically, it's set in the Prohibition era in the 1920s. And it basically shows how Prohibition allowed gangsters to grow in Atlantic City, which is where the show is set. Of course, it does change between locations as well, very well. But yeah, the main place in it is Atlantic City, and it's, you know, there's the Boardwalk shown a lot, which is why it's called Boardwalk Empire, of course. But actually, if you haven't seen the show before and you've watched gangster films like Goodfellas and Casino, which are directed by Martin Scorsese, of course, I think you're going to like this show, because the first episode is directed by Martin Scorsese, and actually there is a lot of influence throughout the whole show of Martin Scorsese. He is the one of the executive producers for every single episode, as is, you know, Mark Wahlberg. And actually the opening episode, yeah, as I mentioned, I think I mentioned it, I don't know, I can't remember, it was a few seconds ago and I can't even remember. The opening episode is directed by Martin Scorsese, and you can really tell that, particularly in the first episode, because there's a lot of like freeze frames and zoom-ins and stuff. Definitely you can tell it's directed by him in that first episode. And it's actually, that episode is one of the best of the season. And what you'll probably notice straight as well from the opening episodes is that the cast of characters in this show are so good. I mean, that is one of the best things about this show, the characters, of course. To make a good TV show, you need really good, intriguing, relatable characters. And that is definitely, you know, there is a lot of them in Boardwalk Empire. And, you know, you've got brilliant actors like Steve Buscemi, Michael Kenneth Williams, Kelly MacDonald. So the main character, well, I mean, he's on, you know, he's on the opening titles and he's in the posters and that. Nucky Thompson is kind of the main character, played by Steve Buscemi, and I think this is probably his best performance, actually. This is basically his first time that he was allowed to do a main role, Steve Buscemi, and yeah, he's absolutely brilliant in this. And you have other characters like Jimmy, who's played by Michael Pitt, I believe his name is. He's been in a few films. Probably my favourite character of the season. You know, he's one of the most human of the bunch. He has a family, you know, basically every kill is for a reason. You can really sense that he doesn't kind of want to do what he does, but he's in a way born to do that type of stuff. But yeah, he's looking after his son and girlfriend. And yeah, just really brilliant, relatable character, played excellently by Michael Pitt. You also have characters like Chalky White, played by Michael Kenneth Williams, who was also in The Wire, who played Omar Little, one of the best characters in that show, one of the best shows of all time as well. I'll probably review them at some point. And you have probably, yeah, as well, one of my favourite characters in this, Kelly MacDonald, who plays Margaret Schroeder. I don't really want to get into her because there's so many shocks and twists and turns even from the first opening episode. But yeah, some certain things happen with her, and she's just brilliant throughout quite a few of the seasons of the show. Yeah, and you got, of course, probably the most known. I mean, this is actually a real life person, because this, in terms of how fictional and non-fictional it is, there's some characters that are fictional and there's some characters that are actual real people. So Al Capone, played by Stephen Graham, who is one of the most underrated actors of this generation by far. He also played I think it was Tommy in Snatch, if you've seen that. And his best performance for me is in This Is England, where he played Combo, and that is one of the best films of all time for me, and I'll be reviewing that at some point. But yeah, in this is by far for me the best portrayal of Al Capone. He does it absolutely brilliantly, ruthless, funny, and also a family man. Yeah, but yeah, so just the cast of characters, that is something that it just does absolutely masterfully for me. The brilliant. Oh, I forgot to mention as well, my favourite character in the whole show, Nelson Van Alden, played by Michael Shannon, who again is an absolutely astonishing actor and one of the best working today. And he's been in quite a few films recently as well. The whole show just has this kind of vintage, classic, gangster vibe to it. It's directed amazingly for the most part. The editing's really good for the most part as well. There's quite a few use of quick cuts and stuff. Now as well, I wanted to quickly touch on the political scenes in it. You know, the kind of table discussions or whatnot, you know, couch discussions. Now sometimes in films they can actually be, on TV shows as well of course, can be what kind of drags it down a bit. They can kind of be boring and not really that relatable, because I'm not even a fan of politics in real life myself. But in this season in particular, they're done brilliantly. They're absolutely just, I mean, because they connect as well, they link to the characters' motivations and everything. It's just done really well. They're not boring, they're actually kind of drive the narrative forward, and they're really, you know, actually interesting. Which, I mean, you know, politics a lot of the time can be really boring actually. So it's good that this show actually does that well. Another character I wanted to quickly mention from earlier, one of the best characters in TV for me, Richard Harrow, who's this kind of sniper guy. I don't really want to touch that much on him, but he's really intriguing. And yeah, again, like Jimmy, he doesn't really want to do this particularly, but he always does it for a reason. Some of the relationships that build in the show, between, I'm not going to say actually the characters, but some of the romances in it are brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It should be, as I mentioned earlier about the violence, there's some really shocking moments in the show that really, really impact you. So yeah, performances are brilliant, directing's really good, editing's for the most part really good. Now in terms of how the pacing is, I think the first episode was absolutely brilliant. It does kind of dip down a tiny bit from them, still amazing, but it does dip down a bit in the kind of second and third episode, picks right up again in the fourth and fifth, and then kind of gets even more better. And the last episode's not particularly masterful like quite a lot of the other episodes, but it's still amazing. But yeah, that's kind of how the season goes. It kind of goes up and down and, you know, down again. The show is also really violent, particularly season 2, the following season, which I'll mention. Obviously I'm going to be reviewing that as well. Season 2 and 3, and they're very, very, very violent. But this show, yeah, it does have its violent moments and quite shocking. If it's of course not for the faint of heart, but if you're into that sort of stuff, it's done really well. It's done humanly, if that's a word. In terms of cons, there is, I think there's the one main flaw for me. Now I did mention that the directing and editing was really good, but in particular this season, this is my only flaw really. Some of the style in some bits, in I think mainly the bar, I can't remember the name of the bar, but it is a bit on the nose in terms of how it's put together and that, and showy. Just, you know, remind everyone this is the 1920s. This is where there was a lot of theatre things and weird dance routines in bars and that, and yeah, that can be a bit too on the nose sometimes. That didn't quite work for me sometimes, but other than that, I mean, yeah, that's my only flaw really with this season. I think it's a brilliant season, absolutely amazing opener. I really urge so many more people to watch this show. I can't really get into too much this season, in terms, I'm sorry if it's a bit brief, but because there's not really that much I can say without spoiling it. But season 2 I will be getting into quite a bit more in depth, because, I mean, well, maybe I liked it more, maybe I didn't. So yeah, absolutely brilliant season, a great first season to an amazing show. And I'm going to give Boardwalk Empire Season 1 an A. I really, really urge so many more people to watch it. I don't actually think it's that expensive on Blu-ray, so you should be able to pick that up. Yeah, thank you for watching. Sorry if it was a little bit brief, but I will be, as I said, getting a little bit more in depth in the further seasons, because there's a lot more stuff to touch on and then a lot more things happen. So yeah, thanks for watching.